investigation with respect to a foreign adversary and their efforts to recruit or cooperate with a U.S. person, would you look at the U.S. person's travel to that country as part of evaluating whether there's an illicit relationship? Yes. Sure. Okay. And are you familiar that President Trump has traveled at least 3 times to Russia? That's not something I'm going to comment on. Are you aware that his son, Donald Trump Jr., has traveled at least 6 times to Russia? Same answer. Donald Trump has said a number of times that he has had nothing to do with Russia. And I want to ask you, Director, if you're familiar with Deutsche Bank and its $300 million loan to Donald Trump and his organization. It's not something I'm going to comment on. Director, are you aware that Deutsche Bank has been investigated and fined over $400 million by New York State for failing to stop transfer of $1 billion out of Russia?
I think generally from press accounts.
So an individual's association with the bank that has had dealings with Russian money laundering, that would be something that would be a red flag for a counterintelligence investigation, I would assume.
That's a hypo I don't want to answer.
By calling it a hypo, I guess you
Director,
answered it.
Would a U.S. business person who is associated with the foreign adversary having tenants in their office building that do business with that foreign adversary, would that be a red flag that a counterintelligence agent would look at?
Yeah, I can't answer that.
Are you aware that in Trump Tower were 2 tenants, Vadim Trincher and Anatoly Golubchik, who ran a high-stakes illegal gambling ring that was run out of Trump Tower?
Same answer.
And are you aware that the prosecutor in that case was U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara?
Same answer.
Are you aware, Director, that that U.S. Attorney was recently fired?
Yes.
By the President of the United States?
I don't know who fired him. I know from press accounts that he was asked to leave.
Director, are you aware of Felix Sater, a former Soviet official and advisor to the Trump Organization?
I'm not going to comment on that.
And Director, outside of Mr. Sater's relationship with the Trump Organization, are you aware that the FBI knew of Mr. Sater because of a $40 million stock fraud case that was prosecuted by the federal government?
Same answer.
Director, would a U.S. person having multiple trademarks, in addition to the other relationships that I just described, be a red flag for a counterintelligence investigation if those trademarks were in Russia?
Multiple trademark?
Yeah, registering trademarks in a foreign adversary's country.
I don't know what to make of that.
Okay. Were you aware that Donald Trump had 6 trademarks in Russia?
Not going to comment on that.
Were you aware that Donald Trump tried to market his Trump vodka brand in Russia?
Same answer.
Wow.
Were you aware that Donald Trump ran Miss Universe 2013 out of Moscow?
Same answer.
Are you aware that Donald Trump Jr. said on a number of occasions that Russian money is pouring into the Trump Organization and that there's a disproportionate cross-section of the company's revenue coming from Russian money?
Same answer, Mr. Swalwell.
So hypothetically speaking, though, would a foreign adversary and its oligarchs having a disproportionate cross-section of a company's revenue coming from that country be a red flag for a counterintelligence agent?
I'm trying to be helpful, but I'm not going to answer.
I understand.
Kind of hypo.
Thank you, Director. Director, are you familiar with a 2004 home purchase by President Trump in Palm Beach County for about $40 million?
Not going to comment on that.
Are you familiar with a 2008 sale of that same property for a 129% increase at about $98 million?
Same answer.
Are you aware that the buyer in 2008 was a Russian businessman?
Same answer.
And under the earlier hypothetical, would a foreign adversary's oligarch purchasing a home in the United States for 129% more than the home was purchased 4 years before, would that be a tool that a foreign adversary would use to try and recruit, develop, or bring somebody onto their side?
Same answer as before.
You said that it's likely or somebody should assume they're being surveilled when they were in Russia. Would you assume that Donald Trump was being surveilled in 2013 when he was in Moscow?
I'm not going to answer. I was trying to confine my answer to prominent people should assume, not students and all those people who might go there for a brief holiday. I don't think I'd ask them to assume that.
Right. Would it be safe to say that if Donald Trump was doing something he shouldn't have been doing while he was in Russia, the Russians probably saw it?
Same answer as before.
Would it be safe to assume that if a prominent person was doing something they shouldn't have been doing while they're in Russia, the Russians probably saw it?
Yeah, I would stick to what I said before about prominent people should assume.
Mr. Director, was Donald Trump under investigation during the campaign?
Same answer as before. I'm not going to answer that.
Is he under investigation now?
I'm not going to answer that. Please don't overinterpret what I've said. As the chair and ranking know, we have briefed them in great detail on the subjects of the investigation and what we're doing, but I'm not going to answer about anybody in this forum.
Director, from our perspective on the committee, the dots continue to connect President Trump, his team, people in his orbit, to Russia. And the questions that we have, it's quite simple. Are these merely 100 different coincidences, or is this a convergence where you're seeing deep personal, political, and financial ties meeting Russia's interference in our campaign? And so I'm wondering, Director, with your extensive counterintelligence expertise and in view of the Russian intelligence campaign to influence the election in which Donald Trump was the candidate, do you consider these number of connections between well-connected Russians and Donald Trump, the Trump organization, the Trump family, and the Trump campaign to be a coincidence or a convergence?
I'm not going to answer, Mr. Slewell.
From your perspective, Director, have you ever seen in the history of American politics, or at least since you've been alive, any political candidate have this many connections, personal, political, and financial, to a foreign adversary?
Same answer.
Mr. Director and Admiral Rogers, this past election, our country was attacked. We were attacked by Russia. It was electronic. It was nearly invisible. Thanks to the hard work of the men and women who serve in our intelligence community, we know that the attack came from Russia. It was ordered by Vladimir Putin. He sought to help Donald Trump and to take down Hillary Clinton. The most disturbing finding for me and my fellow committee members is that Russia intends to do this again. And I see this as an opportunity for everyone on this committee, Republicans and Democrats, to not look in the rearview window, but to look forward and do everything we can to make sure that our country never again allows a foreign adversary to attack us. Because I think, Director, you and Admiral Rogers would agree that it's not only Russia that is sharpening the knives to go back at us or to go at our allies, it's also other countries who have similar capabilities. And so I think the best thing we can do now is unite around this investigation, have also a parallel independent commission to make sure we get to the bottom of what happened, why we were so vulnerable, and to assure the American people we'll never let this happen again. And I yield back.
Dr. Winstrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I can, gentlemen, go back to what we were talking about a little bit before with interference from the Russians, possibly in through our media. Have Russians or Soviets historically attempted to spread disinformation through the U.S. media? As you mentioned, they've been there in over decades trying to interfere. They use media as a resource.
We see them use media writ large as a resource to disseminate disinformation, false information.
And has that been pretty much regardless of who's in the White House?
It doesn't seem to tie to a particular political party, that tactic, if you will.
Thank you.
I think he's the one that said it was
Mr.
ridiculous to think that the Russians, saying the Russians prefer a Republican in office.
Have you ever formed and articulated an opinion about the article?